Hi, this video is going to give an update on a piece that I had started in a previous video where I showed my dyed fabrics. And I'm going to do a show and tell with several of my small square stitched pieces. So here we go. So this is a fabric collage I had started in a previous video when I was showing my dyed fabrics. And at that time I said I may or may not add some more fabrics to it. So what I did is I started to add some stitching here and here. And I just wasn't feeling it. So I put it aside and I worked on another piece. And I've come back to it today and I decided I did want to add more color, more shape, more texture. And so here's some extra pieces I've basted on. And now there's more happening. It's ready to go. And now I feel inspired to continue. Many stitches later, I'm at a midway point. I've added stitches on the bird, quite a bit of stitching on the bottom in different colors. I've added some along this blue strip, and I've outlined this light turquoise color. So now I'm going to continue with stitching in this top area. And I have done one round of blanket stitch in green on 3 sides, and I will add to that as well. So here it is completed. I've added stitching everywhere. I think the colors have blended and I'm happy with it. This first piece, I love the color contrast here of this pinky purple and this golden yellow. I have a few swatches of this silk, and so you'll see that in a few pieces I've used it. It's such a beautiful color. It's one of my favorite colors. So this, I just wanted the colors to speak. So you'll see that it's very minimal stitching, straight lines across, and then lines going up here and lines going up here. So I just really wanted to celebrate the color. And then the contrast of the dark crow here just makes everything pop. This next one has many colors in it. The bird is inspired by a starling. And as I made this piece, I continued to add tiny little scraps of fabric. So the patchwork is built up and up on itself. At the very bottom here, there's a snippet of handwriting that says 2 tablespoons yeast in. It's a snippet from my grandmother's bread recipe, and I have that printed out onto fabric. It's available in my Spoonflower shop. And I have it in just a sepia color, and I have it in this kind of printer's ink bluish green color as well. So to me, in this piece, I was thinking of it as a grounding piece for the rest of these bright colors. I had a piece of fabric that had some text on it, and it seemed like it was from an encyclopedia or something, and it had mentioned in this one little snipping, it had mentioned birds as grebe, loon, tern, gull, pelican, and so that inspired me to make this little tern bird on here. And minimal stitching, straight stitches again. There's some French knots, but it's really about color and texture building up. And then I've used more than one color in blanket stitch around the edging. This one also uses text, and this is a vintage dictionary text, and that's also available in my Spoonflower shop. And in this piece, I used the text as inspiration, color-wise, and just the lines. So I've added another word of text that I had on a scrap of fabric that says splendid, and this flower in the same color coming from down here. This is another piece of fabric from curtains that I had made for my daughter when she was really little. And then there's a leaf and a mimicking of that color down here, just to tie everything together. And then this one I've outlined is actually yarn that I've couched on the edge in that same color. And here's an owl. This is a piece of dyed fabric, and there was some fringe on the bottom that I thought would work really well as a tail. And this is another piece of that silk that I have in that beautiful ochre colors, and it fades into this green color. This one, it's more of the bright yellow, and then it fades at one point into sort of this green, this olivey green. So I've used a snippet here, and there's a leaf on the fabric, so I've outlined here, and there was a line that I thought looked like a branch, so I appliqued on a few leaves, and this one has a black border to make his eyes pop. This piece is inspired by a brown-headed cowbird, and I have dyed fabrics here in the background, and I've cut out some pieces from that same piece of silk and just done some stitching in the top. Just, to me, this, I was thinking of this bird sort of in a field in a meadow, and so that's what's inspired the colors, and some hints of blue to hint at the sky. This is a spotted towhee. I have lots of those that are always in my yard and at my feeder. And so what I was thinking about when I decided to do this towhee was, how does the towhee see the world? And I thought, you know, they have these red eyes, and I thought maybe they see everything in different colors, and if they look at the garden and flowers, maybe this is what they see. And so I just kept adding on top more and more tiny little snippets of bright color. And then I've done mostly black, but several other colors in the edging. This piece started out square. Most of my pieces do. And I just wasn't liking it at one point, and I had left it aside and worked on other pieces. And then I came back one day and I thought, what if I sliced off a side of it? So there was actually more here, making it square, and I just cut it right off, and then it looked better to me, and I saw it as a landscape, and I was able to be re-inspired, and so I added stitches, and I also added the bird after that. This is inspired by a little oriole, so much smaller than the birds I put on other pieces, but I felt like this was a landscape, and this was a nice sunset scene with the bird. This piece is a robin, and so this piece is really an ode to both of my grandmothers, because this piece of linen here reminds me of her dishes, and I have my other grandmother's recipe along the bottom here that's printed onto fabric. And this is that lighter sepia color, and I have both of those in my Spoonflower shop. And so this one, I was thinking of my grandmothers, both of them, who've been gone, oh geez, over 30 years now, both of them. And so I really enjoyed doing this one. Is much more muted colors, and I just added stitching around these flowers and a little bit matching colors on them, because I just wanted this, I didn't want to obscure those beautiful roses, and so I just added some stitching on top to blend it into this next color, and some little flowers, French knot flowers, to mimic here. And this is a junco, another bird that I see a lot in my yard, and they're so cute, and they hop around, and they're just delightful little birds. And so I picked a slightly different color palette. This was a piece of dyed fabric, and I had put both of these colors on and sprayed water, and they blended, and so that was the inspiration for my stitching. It was darker purple here, and it had gone sort of a periwinkle color, and it was lighter here, and then I'd added some of this fuchsia pink down here, and so I just matched that with my stitching. I added the fuchsia here, and then a lighter pink for the transition, and I just followed the line, the pattern, the random pattern that had appeared from dyeing them. And I went a bit literal and added some grass here and some stars in the sky. And this one, as I worked on it, made me think of Vincent van Gogh and the way that he drew. And I didn't intend that at the beginning, but it it started to come out that way. So that was really fun. And then for the edging, I used all the colors that were in the piece for the border. This one I just completed recently. This is inspired by purple finches or house finches. And if you hop over to my Instagram, you'll see I made a reel of the process of making this. And it started out as, these are two fabrics here that are the same, and then there's some dyed green fabric here, there's a strip of striped fabric here, and a lighter turquoise. And it's so heavily stitched that everything has really blended together really well. It's hard to distinguish between them. I really like the way this turned out, and I did really heavy stitching on the bird this time. And she, in the little reel that I made on Instagram, I'm petting the bird all the way along as I'm doing it because I just found her so cute. And then for the border, I did stitching in just using the colors that I'd used in here in just slightly different little strips of color, little bands of color. So these two are the darkest I used for the bird, and then the medium tone that I use for the bird, and then the greens and blues that are in the other places. And then I'll show you what I'm working on right now. I've just started. This is a red-winged blackbird, and I have made the collage and I've basted and put everything down. So it's all tacked down, and I've started on the wing, and then I've hopped over and just started doing some stitching at the top, and that's as far as I've gotten. So that'll be the next one that I work on. So that concludes the show and tell for today. Thank you.